I would like to begin by welcoming those members of the public and press who have joined us today in St Ives, and also those who are watching the meeting on our live stream. Combined Authority allows filming and photography at its public meetings, so please feel free to take pictures and tweet during the meeting. Can I ask, though, that everyone present turn their mobile phone to silent or vibrate whilst the meeting is taking place? The meeting room has been arranged to comply with the public health guidance on COVID safety. On their advice, committee members and officers will remove their face coverings at the start of the meeting and replace them at the end. This is to minimise the number of hand-to-face contacts. Could I ask members of the public and press to keep their masks on? Report presenters will be attending the meeting via a Zoom link. I would remind members and officers that the meeting will be recorded.
Good morning, members. We begin with item 1.1, which is the appointment of the chair of the committee. I'm delighted to confirm that Councillor Lucy Netzinger was appointed as chair of the Skills Committee at the annual meeting of the Combined Authority on the 2nd of June 2021. Welcome, Councillor Netzinger.
Thank you very much. It's a great privilege to be here, and I'm delighted to be here. I'm actually really pleased to be here in a room with other people rather than on Zoom, even though it's slightly surreal to be spaced out in this very large space. I think we will move on with the business of the meeting, but thank you very much for your support in the coming years. Would the Democratic Services Officer like to tell us about any apologies for absence?
We've received apologies from Councillor Eileen Wilson and Councillor Neil Goff is substituting, and we've also received apologies from Councillor Chris Seaton.
Thank you very much. Do any members wish to declare a disclosable pecuniary interest or non-statutory disclosable interest in any of the items being considered today? No, that's as expected. Item 1.3 is the approval of the minutes of the meeting on the 15th of March 2021. We are being asked to confirm these as an accurate record. If any member wishes to raise a question on the accuracy of the minutes, please could you indicate that now? I see no objections, so I will take the minutes as approved. So we move on to the action log. Do any members have any comments or questions on the action log? I don't see any questions or comments on the action log, so we will move on to the next item on the agenda. The next item on the agenda is public questions. We have not received any public questions for this meeting today. The next item on the agenda after public questions is comments on the agenda plan. Do any members have any comments on the agenda plan? Mike.
I think it's just, I suppose, John, to check whether or not there'll be an update on Brexit recovery and whether that's planning to, if that's, it may well be one of the subsets within the agenda plan, but I just wondered if it might be worth identifying a look at that later, because invariably COVID has tended to dominate things, but I think it might be worthwhile having a look at the impact of Brexit at some stage, of course, for the next 12 months.
Yes, absolutely, Councillor. We'll make sure we schedule that onto the agenda.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. The next item on the agenda is the Combined Authorities Forward Plan. Do any members of the committee have any comments on the Combined Authorities Forward Plan? No comments so far. Thank you. So the next item is reports to the Combined Authority. I think we have our first report on the adult education budget funding allocations for 2021-22. And I think Parminder is going to be reporting on that. We'll be reporting from remotely, so we'll hope that everyone is able to see and hear him clearly. And that will probably require a minute or two to get the technology up and running. But whenever Parminder's ready, we're ready.
Good morning, members of the Skills Committee. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
So thank you, and a very warm welcome to the new members of the committee too. So this paper sets out the combined authorities allocations for the academic year 21-22. So as part of our devolution agreement, we have delegated devolved budget for the adult education, which amounts to 11.9 million, and this is a recurring budget for each academic year. This paper is seeking authority to allocate to the providers who are the current providers who we have commissioned, as set out in Table A in the paper. And the funding allocations amount to 9.9 million out of our 11.9 million. And then we're looking to allocate £1 million to the current providers to make a case for growth in their programs. And the idea of this is to ensure alignment with our local skills needs and to encourage our providers to develop curriculum in those areas. So we're also, it's the first time that we're able to be cognizant of previous performance when making allocations. So for the previous 2 years, we have gone on recurrent allocations and just continued with those, being mindful of the impact of the pandemic on our providers. So year 3 is the first opportunity really to take a closer look at the funding and to look at making any adjustments. We're also looking at how we implement a light touch commissioning approach in order to bring some new providers during the academic year in order to meet gaps in provision. And then the second bit of the paper is around the funding flexibilities that we are allowed as part of our devolution to implement within the region. And the paper sets out some of those funding rule changes and local policies within the combined authority area that we're looking to implement. And you will have seen from the paper that most of these are around how we look to increase participation amongst adult learners across the region, how we look at levelling up and addressing some of the educational inequalities that we have in the region, and also how we look at meeting the skills gap and using skills in order to improve our productivity across the region. So a very quick summary of those. So we have fully funded ESOL, English for speakers of other languages, that we're continuing with. We're providing an uplift, a funding rate uplift for those residents who live in the most deprived wards within the region. And the big change here is that there are some additional wards, particularly in South Cambs, that have come into scope. We're also extending the entitlement to level 2. So level 2 is GCSE level, where we're continuing with the entitlement for all adults who have not achieved their level 2 to a fully funded offer. And we're increasing our low wage threshold from 18,000 to 20,000 in order to improve participation. And we're also looking at a youth offer. And as part of that, we're looking to improve the funding that goes for 19 to 23-year-olds by providing a funding rate uplift. And we have funding for level 3 as well. So level 3 is A-level equivalent. And we're looking to provide opportunities for a second level 3 qualification for those people who may have been made unemployed or who are looking to upskill or reskill. We're looking to pilot a level 4 offer as well, in terms of ensuring that we have higher level skills into higher education. And then finally, we're looking at some of the vulnerable people within the population. And the first group that we're looking at providing an extended offer for are care leavers aged 19 to 22. And we're scoping out what that offer might look like. So this paper sets out our funding allocations process, and it also demonstrates how we're using our devolved powers in order to really raise participation across the region, and how we're looking to level up across the region as well. Thank you. Any questions from the committee?
Liz has a question.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Comment. Oh, lost it.
He's back with us, don't worry, just carry on. We can hear, I think.
Good morning, Comment. It's great to talk to you today. First of all, I want to say a huge thank you for the extended support package that you're going to put in place for our care leavers. I can't tell you how excited I am about that, and to know that you're working with the team on that, but also the armed forces personnel. So that's great that you have, I know that you have responded to requests on this, and I'm really grateful. I just wanted to refer to 3.2, item 2, which is on page 25. You say invest in a 10% funding rate uplift to encourage and take up and incentivise providers to target, etc. We all know how difficult it is to actually get those youngsters to engage, and I'm just wondering what innovative activities you're going to put in place in order to achieve that. Thank you.
Is Parminder able to reply?
So in terms of young
Did you
people,
get that?
Thank you, Parminder.
can you hear me? So in terms of young people, we're looking at developing a youth offer, particularly for the 19 to 24 age group. And we're looking to work in co-production with our training providers to help them to come up with the innovative offer that you spoke about, Councillor Every. So our levers are around the funding and the funding policy, and in terms of how we provide some strategic direction to our providers to encourage them. But ultimately, we're looking at them as the sector experts to come up with the ideas around what delivery looks like and what innovative delivery might look like. So over the summer, we'll be doing some work with the providers to scope out in practice how these policy changes might land and how they might use these flexibilities more creatively in order to engage residents, especially young people, given that we know that youth unemployment is an issue in some parts of the region. So we'll be looking to co-produce and work with our providers to enable them to deliver this policy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lynn, did you want to?
I've got two questions actually. So if I can just deal with the first one first, and then
Could you do them both together, Lynn? Because I think switching between the two, between here and there, is a bit tricky. So if you give him both questions, I'm sure he'll then be able to answer
that's
them
fine.
both.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I was making sure I understood what is laid out here, particularly for the growth cases, because at Peterborough we have the City College, which has dealt over many years with people who are well below level 3, indeed some of them below level 1, in order to sort of bring them into skills, etc. Level 1 and 2 are popular. And last year, I gather, we had some growth case, quite a lot of growth cases within that ambit of the people that are dealt with at City College. But it appears to be saying that the growth cases are only for level 3. This is on page 24, and it's on paragraph 2.5. So is that correct, or and how are we going to, as it were, develop growth cases in anybody who is lower than level 3 if they don't want to go to level 3?
So I'll let Parminder answer that. I think it's because that's additional and we're still doing the other thing, but we'll see what Parminder says.
Yes.
Do you want to ask your second question and then we'll go to him?
Yes, well, the second one was because I looked at the table A, and although Peterborough City has got a rise in the baseline allocation of 21-22, there were an awful lot of providers and like the Cambridge Regional College, etc., in Spa, which is Peterborough College in Peterborough, who got less. And I wondered why it had gone down. Was that because, bearing in mind that everybody's been affected by the pandemic, and obviously it's been more difficult get people into training and into skills training during this 18 months of the pandemic? Is it because of that, because they've been looking at past performance, which has been badly affected probably by the pandemic? So yes, I was just making sure that everybody's got enough to move forward.
Okay, Parminder, are you able to answer those two questions?
Yes. So thank you for those questions. Really insightful questions. The first one is around level 3. And this is all about the mix and balance of provision that we have. So at the moment, the majority of our investment in adult education actually goes on provision at level 2 and below. We actually have a very small amount. I think it comes to about 2% of our budget is used on level 3. So what we're trying to do with the growth cases is try and bring that back into balance by putting a focus on those intermediate level 3 skills. So if you think about the 9.9 million, the majority of that actually goes on the lower level skills at the moment. So what we feel is that we are actually quite well catered for in terms of the lower level skills. So in terms of but in terms of level 3, that is where we need to grow provision, and that's what we're trying to do with the growth cases. So just to reassure members that we are certainly not removing lower level provision. We're looking at strengthening provision at level 3. And then the second question was around do our existing providers have the right level of funding? So as I was saying in the introduction, we're looking at rebalancing some of the funding based on past performance. What I'm really delighted to report is that our providers this year have done very well in terms of closing the gap in terms of where they were the previous year and where they are now. It's something like a 2% gap, which is much better than in terms of enrollments. At this point, we've still got the rest of the academic year as well for more enrollments to come in. So generally, our providers have responded very well to online learning, and they have continued to ensure that we have good participation. In terms of do providers have sufficient funds, we're currently talking to our providers around that, and most of them have told us that the baseline is okay in terms of their business planning, and where it's not, they're looking to submit a growth case, and we are looking at implementing a second growth case opportunity in January as well, subject to the budget. So there will be another opportunity if the funding is insufficient for them to make a case for further funding.
Thank you. Mike, I think you've got a question.
Two questions, it's just, and maybe I've missed this, so forgive me. I was just wondering why Steadfast have been identified separately to the other providers wanting our approval today. And as I say, forgive me if I missed that within the paper. And the second paper is linked to the second question, sorry, is linked to the previous question and about the growth cases. I fully understand what's being proposed. I suppose my question is around how have the providers responded to that request to date? Because clearly this is about how we're looking towards the future training, and I'm just interested to know how providers are responding. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Parminder.
So if I take the question about Steadfast, so it's to do with the Combined Authorities Constitution and the limit of £500,000. So where we have contracts being awarded for £500,000, we have to request those as a separate request separate authority for those. So that's to do with that reason. That's why they've been listed separately, because of the £500,000 threshold. And then the second question was around how our family of providers have responded to this new process. So generally speaking, we've had a positive response to it. There are what providers welcome is the opportunity to have a more transformational and dynamic relationship with the combined authority, and also to have the flexibilities to have ongoing dialogue with us. So where there are issues or where there are pressure points, in terms of delivery. They are able to have those conversations in year with us. So at the moment, we still have another week before the deadline for the growth cases. But all of the conversations that we've had have generally been positive. And we look forward to continue working with the providers to enable that the system is responsive. And that's what we're trying to do, is trying to make the system more responsive to both learners and to employers. So rather than providers being continuing, if you like, with the status quo, trying to enable a bit of innovation and trying to enable them to be more responsive and using our funding tools to enable that to happen.
Thank you. Neil.
Yeah, sorry, I'm going to ask another question on table A. Could you just tell us what the outturn is for 2021 in terms of the budget? Is that the same as the final allocation, the outturn, or is there a difference there? That's one question. Secondly, on 2.5, in terms of the growth cases, these additional sectors which are mentioned here, which all seem very sensible, but following on the conversation we had about both sides of it, both the training and the employer side of it, I'm just interested to know whether these are also being reflected by local employers saying that there are gaps in these particular sectors and these particular skills. And then the third question, which I think you've sort of asked, but you know, one of the issues I think we face in the sector is that everyone's under a lot of pressure, and that includes the providers as well. And just like some assurance from you that these additional growth cases are fairly, are not imposing an additional significant burden on the providers, because they are fairly small sums of money in comparison to the total allocation. So you know, they are stretched too as well, and we need to make sure that those processes are light touch. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin.
So to take the first question, which was about the outturn. So in terms of the final outturn for 2021, we won't have that until November. We've still got delivery taking place. We've still got the way that the funding works. Providers also won't submit their final claim until the autumn. So, and we do report that to the Skills Committee in November. So that will we'll be able to report on that. In terms of the second question I think was about skills demand and skills needs. So we have a range of intel that we have that helps us to understand what the skills demands and skills needs are. That includes live labour market information, vacancy information. We also, our strategy is aligned to our economic recovery strategy and also our local industrial strategy. So all of this deep dive work that was done to identify what the opportunities are for the sector around, for the region around skills, we're cognizant of those. And there is another paper coming later in the Skills Committee that talks about the refresh of the skills strategy. And again, we trying to create a flexible system that will respond to emerging needs, given the pandemic, given Brexit, given the new economic reality we find ourselves in. There is an element of flexibility built into the system. So just to reassure members of that. And then the final question was about combined authority processes and procedures and being cognizant of creating undue pressure on providers. And just to reassure members that we are a very agile and light touch team, but nonetheless robust and thorough in terms of our processes, and that we're not in the business of creating undue bureaucracy for our providers in terms of responding to requests for information. That and whenever we as part of our annual process, we also evaluate our processes. We undertake feedback from the sector in terms of those processes, so that we can have a continuous improvement cycle to ensure that we mitigate against placing undue pressures or undue red tape and bureaucracy on our providers, where it's in our gift to remove those pressures.
Thank you. You happy? Right, you don't want to come back, Neil?
Yeah, can I just come back?
Yeah.
Sorry. So while I understand why final numbers are not likely to come out to November, what's your sense of what the trajectory is relative to those allocations? Are we likely to spend up to those allocations, or how is that outturn likely to be?
So we're currently in our Q3 reviews with our providers. So as part of that conversation, we will have received forecast figures from all of our providers. So the picture varies from provider to provider, but overall, as a program, we are expecting to hit our overall figure in terms of the amount that we've contracted and allocated to providers as a program. There are variations between providers.
Okay, thank you very much, Paminda. Paul, no, John, sorry. John.
Thank you. Long time since we met.
Yes, and I know it's John. Anyway.
He's too far away. I can't see any name. Thank you very much. I will briefly go over table 8, but not much, because I think we've done quite a bit on it. And I suppose it's a difficult one because we're looking at baseline allocations on something we're not 100% sure where we covered over the last year. It was a difficult one. But that's a timing issue, and I understand that. Because some of it I was trying to work out where's the push and pull from the figures as well, as to have providers ask for this, or are we saying this is what you could have, which I think is where some of the other areas you're looking at is actually giving a bit more flexibility to that. I really do appreciate what's been done here, and I think there's a lot of good stuff, and I agree with Liz there, you know, the real push for carers to support that particular sector. And of course, I have to mention the former armed service personnel as well. I don't think we do enough in those particular areas to really push some of that training. I suppose my main question for Paminda is, where have we looked at, and I'll be parochial, Huntingdonshire as providers, because as a large district it's very difficult, but we do have some very strong hotspots, you know, towards the north, which, you know, borders onto Finland. And I don't know how many providers, if any, have come forward recently to say this is what we want, as well as the industries themselves. So that's quite a wide range number of questions there, and I might not be able to give a direct answer, but at least I'll be able to help. Thank you.
Paminda?
Yeah, I think your question is a wider question around district level participation, and also understanding what I would call gaps in provision. So as part of our skills strategy refresh, there is work going on to look at gaps in provision, and also to look at participation across districts. So if I say to you that we're cognizant of some of these gaps, and through the development of the skills strategy over the summer period, we will be coming out to districts and doing more of a deeper dive into some of these localized issues. So I guess today is just to provide some assurance that district level participation and district level gaps in provision is definitely on our radar, and something that we will be considering as part of the skills strategy.
Thank you very much, Paminda. I don't think I see any further questions. So I'd like to add my thanks to those of the committee who've already spoken for the paper and just say how important I think it is that we are now able to look at performance and be more flexible and in the way that we work with providers. I think it's a particularly important time for adult education. I think that the enormous number of changes that have taken place in our economy over the last year mean that there will be, it's a really important time to help people and re-skill people to help them move into new roles as the economy has changed. So this is an area where we really need to be working closely with our providers over the coming year. I think that the past year has been an extremely difficult year for education in all sorts of ways, and particularly for adult education. So the coming year is going to be a really important one for us to be working as closely as we possibly can with those providers. And so the flexibility in this paper is really welcome. Okay, let's move on to the actual decisions that we have to make. So we are recommended, I think I'm going to take these all as one block because I haven't seen any sign that anybody's wanting to vote against anything. So we are recommended, we recommend to the Combined Authority Board to approve the funding allocations for the 2021-22 academic year from the devolved adult education budget to the providers as set out in Table A. We recommend to the Combined Authority Board to grant authority to enter into a contract for services with Steadfast Training Limited. We delegate authority to the Director of Business and Skills in consultation with the Chief Finance Officer and the Monitoring Officer to enter into a contract for services with the providers as set out in Table A on behalf of the Combined Authority. We delegate authority to the Director of Business and Skills in consultation with the Chief Finance Officer to enter into a grant funding agreement as set out in Table A, and to delegate authority in consultation to the Director of Business and Skills in consultation with the Chief Finance Officer and the Monitoring Officer to procure, award and enter into a contract to recommend the new projects as required within the devolved adult education grant 21-22 set out in the commissioning guiding principles, and to approve the implementation of the funding policy changes and funding flexibilities for the coming academic year. So I am happy to propose that. Does anybody wish to second? Liz, thank you very much. So we'll now move to a vote. Could I see a show of hands to vote this through, please? So that we just assume it. All those in favour? Fantastic. I think that's unanimous. Thank you very much. So the next item on the agenda is on the future funding strategy, and I'll hand over to John for this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this paper, members, is to note the Combined Authority's approval for the processes for the selection of bids to the Levelling Up Fund and the Community Renewal Fund from the constituent local authorities to the government on the 18th of June, which is when the submission deadline is this Friday. Also, to provide the opportunity for bids to be put forward by that deadline and in advance of the Combined Authorities board meeting on the 30th of June, the mayoral decision notice. And finally, to provide the opportunity for final selection of the bids for submission following the process, the LUF by a panel from each local authority, led by the leader of that local authority, and each place, but with the participation of the Combined Authority Mayor and the Chair of its Business Board. And for the Community Renewal Fund, selection was by the leaders from each of the local authority within the constituent Combined Authority in consultation with the Mayor, and that occurred last week. So if I could give you some details on each of the two funds. I'll start with the Levelling Up Fund. Any district or unitary authority in England can bid into the Levelling Up Fund for regeneration projects up to 20 million in size. Local transport authorities, including the Combined Authority, can additionally submit bids to the Levelling Up Fund for transport-related projects up to 50 million. Bids to the first round are to be submitted on the 18th of June, as I said, this Friday, with evidence of physical build commencement by 31st of March next year and completion by 31st of March 2024. So these are effectively shovel-ready projects. Only one regeneration bid may be approved for the whole of the Levelling Up Fund programme to 2024 per place per MP. So the way that would pan out in the case of Peterborough and Fenland, for instance. Fenland has got one MP, so it can put one bid forward. Peterborough actually has two MPs, so it potentially can put two bids forward. The process for selecting the candidate Levelling Up Fund regeneration bids has been co-developed based on a voluntary arrangement between the combined authority and the two authorities putting potentially putting bids forward, those being Peterborough City Council and Fenland District Council, and provide a clear and transparent bid collection and evaluation process within each of a quality scoring matrix is employed, and that's provided in the paper's Appendix 3. The CPCA, in collaboration with Peterborough City Council, has promoted the Levelling Up Fund opportunity to bid for regeneration projects through a call for proposals for bid candidate projects to feed into the evaluation process. The call for proposals has been promoted to the business community, colleges, and the community and third sector organisations, and PCC has elected to bid the first round, recognising that subsequent bids, but as a priority one place, feeling have a good chance in securing funds in the first round, and that this maximises the window of delivery for the project once allocated. Fenland District Council have elected to feed bid candidate projects through an internal process involving officers and elected representatives. However, they did use the same scoring matrix that Peterborough City Council used. The paper said that I'd give a verbal update at this committee meeting about which bids were actually selected, and I can tell you that for Fenland, leagues decided and leaders decided that they would not bid into the first round because they didn't have projects that were sufficiently developed, particularly to hit the deadline of a spade in the ground by March next year and completion by March 2024. However, Peterborough City Council, out of 4 potential projects, did select a bid to go forward, and that is in fact the bid that you saw earlier on in training, the Phase 3 university bid for a second a second teaching building and a living lab. On the Community Renewal Fund, bids from Peterborough and Fenland again were prioritised. As bids are assessed in competition, evaluation will be weighted in favour of bids from these priority places. The priority system was something defined by government. Only exceptional bids are likely to be approved from elsewhere. So just a clarity on both Levelling Up and Community Renewal. Anywhere can put bids forward. It's just that in the national competition, bids from priority areas will be weighted. So other areas such as Huntingdonshire or South Cants would have to produce exceptional bids in order to get through the weighting process to be approved. A single bid or a collection of bids up to a maximum of £3 million can be put forward from the local authority places, and these are all new projects to be spent in 6 months. So if the Levelling Up Fund was a very fast turnaround, this is even faster. It's 3 million in place for revenue activity, particularly around COVID recovery, that's got to be spent in 6 months and completed by the 31st of March 2021. Again, the combined authority is coordinating the design and implementation of a transparent bid collection and evaluation process using a scoring matrix, which again is in Appendix 3. And officers from Peterborough City Council, Fenland District Council and the combined authority evaluated those bids and put forward recommendations to the combined authority leaders last week, in fact, and those 7 bids were selected. Again, the paper says that I'll give a verbal update on which were selected, and we can send details through after the meeting. But fundamentally, there were 7. 2 from the Combined Authority itself, 1 around supporting transition to work post-COVID, particularly between sectors and disrupted sectors. A second from the Combined Authority, which is around startup support in the 6 months ahead, or 9 months nearly, to 31st of March. There simply won't be as many jobs in the economy as there are displaced people. So one of the ways that we are looking to address that is to actually help some people start up their own business as sole traders if there aren't enough jobs for them to go to. So that's that particular project. There is a project from Cambridgeshire ACRI, which is about place modelling to build community infrastructure and innovation. And this takes over from the old EU-funded LEADER projects for rural areas. So this project is in many ways a transition from LEADER to UK-funded rural projects. A third from Opportunity Peterborough, which is about stimulating innovation and growth in skills in green sectors and sustainability in local companies around Peterborough. There's a City College bid that is about encouraging take-up of education into colleges in Peterborough, particularly for reskilling, of course, and upskilling post-pandemic. There's a Cambridge City bid that is about upskilling and retraining and connecting displaced talent into both education and jobs. And then finally, there's a West Suffolk College bid that is actually in Chatteris, that is with employers there, Metalcraft and Arup, the big construction company, that is around giving training and advice on advanced manufacturing techniques to small companies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Liz?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much, John. It's really interesting to hear what the bids were. I just wanted to get clarity because I'm not quite sure. I totally accept the levelling up is Peterborough and Fenland, but I also need to point forward that other areas have also deprivation, particularly in East Cambs, where we butt on to Fenland. The districts that were missing, of course, I wondered, first of all, what kind of effort had got into trying to get those to either put in a bid themselves or to be a collaborative bid. And one of the things that I was particularly keen on supporting is that in East Cambs we have no further education establishments. We have a sixth form. We absolutely butt on to Chatteris. We're very, very keen to work with Fenland on the craft hub, and we would quite like to turn some of our youngsters' faces towards the north in order to do their apprenticeship training and so on. And transport would be a key. We would not be able to get our youngsters into Fenland. We could get them into Cambridge, that's fine, quite expensive, but we can get them there. So I wondered whether anything was considered, like the Peterborough City bid, about encouraging youngsters to come from different areas by supporting transport, other than the areas that just put in the bids, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? I'm not sure. Because I can see East Cambs is going to be a nice little void in the middle, butted around by everybody else, and here we are again. And we are already in discussion with Fenland District Council about how we can manage, and my counterpart, Councillor Seaton, on how we can manage to engage with that apprenticeship hub, which is so vital for both our areas. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. There's a number of things in there, but the theme here is, although it's a prioritisation process, what can be done to spread the opportunities across our districts? And I can respond in a number of ways. On the Community Renewal Fund, in fact, up to 50% of the 2-3 millions Fenland and Peterborough can actually be spent in places other than Peterborough and Fenland. And one of the things that we put into the criteria was exactly what you're saying there, Councillor, whereby it may be, for instance, Fenland or Peterborough bid, but how much of it is actually delivered elsewhere. And I can say that all but just a couple of the bids were actually well spread in their activity across the area. So, even within the prioritisation system, we did look to spread the activity across all areas. However, that was 6 months worth of revenue, so that wouldn't, for instance, help to solve the absence of FE in Ely, for instance. However, and as you know, we are actively encouraging a bid that we hope will be eligible for what will replace the CRF, the Communities Renewal Fund, next year, which will be called the Shared Prosperity Fund. And I can give you some encouragement in that, although the total national budget this year was 220 million for CRF, that still leaves 4.3 billion for future years under the Shared Prosperity Fund. So in future years, next year and the year after in particular, there will be much greater opportunity to bid. We do not know, but we are expecting, especially as the CRF allowed 50% of the funding to be spent elsewhere, we are expecting the rules for Shared Prosperity Fund next year to be less specific on their geographic prioritisation. So I can actually say that we are working with partners for some sort of bid for shared prosperity for further education in Ely next year. And there's another one there on transport. Harminder is going to try and use some of his AB budget to run a pilot on transport subsidies to get people from places that don't have FE into places that do. And I can also tell you that we are in dialogue with our transport team such that when they do move to bus franchising, there is an element of bus franchising that is specifically about subsidies on routes that would be for students in places without FE, getting them to places with FE. So I hope that answers your questions.
Yeah, encouraging, thank you.
Mike, did you?
Yes, I think it's possibly linked, so forgive if there's some duplication. When you're going through the bidding, sorry, I should start by saying I absolutely approve of the fact that you've prioritised Peterborough and Fenland. Would be the bid titles in a sense wouldn't make sense if Cambridge was more heavily involved. But it's the corollary of that. I was fully expecting Fenland to come up through the list that you were giving us, and it would appear that Fenland didn't make a bid for the first, and of the 7 bids under the other one, they're linked. Now, I suppose it's possible that Cower made a bid through Norfolk, which will then affect Fenland, and I suspect the answer you gave to Liz might address some of that, because it seems like although other people made bids, they can still apply work to Fenland. So it's just about, as I say, given it was a priority,
yeah. I
just wondered if you could reassure me that Fenland will be gaining some benefits from the bidding process.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can give you 3 examples of how they will on the CRF, and then I'll deal with the LUF later. In fact, of course, the West Suffolk bid is in Chatteris, so that's Fenland. Also, that Cambridge Accra that was replacing leader funds, that's actually Fenland focused as well. And I can also tell you that the transitioning, the combined authority bid around transitioning, supporting people into work, much of that, or in fact most of that work, it will be in Fenland. So although it's a combined authority bid, it is focused towards Fenland because there's need and displacement there. So on the CRF, there is actually a fair amount. On the Levelling Up Fund, in fact, there were a number of candidate bids that Fenland did put into the process, and one of them was Cower, College of West Anglia, for a green FE capacity building project on their Wisbech campus. However, that bid and another bid that was around Octavia House on the riverfront there, the Nene riverfront, simply weren't developed enough to have any chance. And the problem here was our process the launch was only in late March of the government actually saying this money is available. The process to collect all the ideas and develop the ideas culminated only last week in the selection, which leaves pretty much 2 weeks to get high quality bid together. And timescales were just too tight for those projects in Wisbech, which were great projects, but just not developed enough. So with great regret, potentially, colleagues and leaders there decided to move into the next round.
Thank you, John. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ben?
Yes, thank you. Can I just ask about the City College bid? I think you mentioned, I wasn't quite sure, because I thought that they'd made a bid in relation to the line. Am I right in that, John? Or you know, by that I mean, you know, the new building we've got that's going to, which you described in the training as well. That's what I thought, but I may be wrong.
Yes, so I'm not. So I have to say, I'm not sure whether this is in the Vine or whether it is the building next to it. But what it is,
I think it might. I think it would be the case.
I think it is. Yeah.
I'm covering both the temporary building and ultimately the Vine itself.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So no, that there wasn't a bid for the itself.
No.
But the bid that they did get approved was in, as you say, I think it's.
Yes, the next door building.
Yeah, yeah. Yes. The next door building, and it's like a community hub, information about training and jobs. It's got library temporarily in there as well.
Good, good. That's the one. That's the one you were referring to. Thank you very much.
That's been approved.
Great. Thank you, John.
Thank you. Again, I think it's warmly welcomed, and I think it is headed directly in the correct location. What I am pleased about is I've noted things down like transportation, which you've actually answered, that you will be looking at transportation. Because I think, as Liz has said, there are areas which obviously hit too far out for people to travel, whether affordability on travel, whether it's actually distance confirmed. So I think it's really important that we do look at that, and actually a lot more work for the future to work with officers with all districts to try and work out how we can combine together to get one transportation and providers in better locations for some of those. So,
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. And I will respond to that only by infusing and agreeing that there is a balance here to be developed in places like Chatteris and Wisbech to actually be building FE capacity where there is none. But the other side of that balance is that's long and it's expensive and it's big capital. So what else can we do? That more tactical sense about moving people from where there isn't to where there is, and we are looking at that. And that's a relatively new development from us to look at the strategic and the tactical at the same time. And I'll just make one clarification around the prioritisation towards Peterborough and Fenland. Just to clarify, that was not a combined authority prioritisation. That was defined by central government.
Okay. Yep.
Just to briefly come back on that, and I think this is where borders don't make a difference to education, isn't it? And it's all the way across. I mean, you know, Chatteris is really from a Ramsey perspective as well, as long as the transportation links are still in there.
Good. Thank you very much, John. This report was for noting, and while we've discussed it, I haven't heard anybody have any concerns or complaints about what's there. So unless Tamar needs us to do anything else, I think we will note the report and move on. I don't think we need to take a vote on it because we're just.
We need a proposer and a second. Yes, please. Yes. We still need a proposer and a seconder.
Okay,
yes.
fine. Right, well, I'm very happy to propose the report. Would anybody like to second it? Thank you, Mike. So we have a proposer and a seconder, and I think we will accept it because there's been no disagreement. So as I see no objections, we will take the recommendations as carried. Excellent. Excellent. Okay, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is GrowthWorks Management Review. Now, is this being introduced by Alan and Nigel remotely?
It is indeed.
Okay, so whenever Alan and Nigel are ready, you put them up.
Nigel, could you please turn on your camera?
Yeah, I hope you can see me now. Is that okay?
While they're just coming, may I introduce them both, if I may? Nigel, up there is the chair of the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Growth Company. This was the legal entity we set up in order to invest money into it, to create the funding to run these job stimulation programs. And his partner will be Alan Downton, who is our Senior Responsible Officer for delivering those programs. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Nigel. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, and good morning, committee members, and thank you for your time this morning. As John has said, I'm the non-executive director and independent chair of the Growth Company, and the plan is this morning to give you a brief overview and then pass on to Alan, who will then take us through details around the paper. We have kind of 3/4 objectives this morning. The primary objective is to seek a nomination from the Skills Committee for a member to be a member of the Programme Management Committee of Growth Co. And then also to note that there'll be a representation from the Business Board on both the GrowthWorks Investment Panel and Programme Management Committee. In the paper, there's lengthy descriptions of both of those groups. And also to note the financial and non-financial performance of GrowthWorks and request any required changes reporting going forward. And then finally, of course, we welcome any questions from the committee members around the services provided. Just in terms of quick overview, we finally signed the contract with the service provider, which was led by Gately, with a consortium of other companies to provide the 4 key pillar services. And that was on the 12th of February. We've been in mobilisation phase since then, up until the end of May, where we had 2 launches. We had a pre-launch where we had all of our key stakeholders participating, including district councils. And we then had the main public launch the week later at the end of May. And so we've been effectively in execution since over the last 2 weeks, since the bank holiday weekend. And so far, we're pretty encouraged with the progress we're making. We will have a separate reporting structure that will be through a portal that we plan on making available to all members and all key stakeholders, so that everyone's able to access the results of what's happening ahead of committee meetings and almost in a real-time type basis. So we expect to see that develop over the course of the next few months. In terms of the progress overall, if I just draw your attention to section 6, which is really focused on the skills service, and just to remind everybody, we've got the 4 pillars of growth coaching, inward investment, grant and equity placement, and then skills service. On the skills service side, you'll see in item 6 that a lot of the performance to date has been around building a digital platform that allows businesses to really connect with the service providers and with candidates for jobs, but also providing a strategic overview for us as a region around the talent maturity index of companies and the gaps that need to be filled, that allow us then to link with the education service providers in the region, in the wider LEP, to ensure that they're providing the skills and developing younger people to have the right skill set for go forward. And alongside that is also the intention that we are filling apprenticeship spaces, working with those companies with high growth potential to bring young people into those apprenticeship positions, with the aim being across the 3 years of the contract to have at least 1,400 apprenticeships, and our ideal is to do better than that. So overall, not a lot of report because we've been in mobilisation stage and getting things structured. We have worked diligently to make sure that we're aligned with all the district councils and their economic development officers, and that's also been very encouraging. What we have to make sure is that we continue to collaborate and partner and be very inclusive as we move forward. And that's our intention. I certainly hope by the time we have the next skills committee meeting, where we're on the agenda, that we'll be able to report out some more progress in terms of actual results rather than just the activity-based work that's happened so far. And at this point, I'd pass us on to Alan Doughton, for Alan Doughton to take us through the detailed request of the paper. So I don't see Alan on the...
Thank you, Alan. Could you bring Alan in? We don't seem to have Alan at the moment.
Okay. If Alan is indeed absent, then I suggest we just take the paper as provided and take questions.
So shall we take any questions on what Nigel has said to start with, while we see whether Alan is available?
Monica, who's on the Zoom, just
Lynn,
let me know
you
that
have a
he's
question?
not there. So.
Yes, thank you. Yes, just one. I wanted to say how pleased I was about the how you've managed to engage with these two companies, I think, in Peterborough. I'm trying to find it now in my papers. But they do get, yes, here on the inward investment, and how pleased I was about that. Particularly the one who was moved to downsize from London, which I thought was very good. But also, I wondered what was happening about the special educational needs schools. Under skills on 6.5, performance in the Careers and Enterprise Company contract is now on an upward trajectory. Started engaging with all special educational needs schools. Can I ask how long that will take, and whether that's already begun, and where you're actually, and presumably every special educational needs school in the whole county being the whole of Cambridgeshire, including Peterborough. Could I ask that, please, Nigel?
Yeah, can I refer that? I don't know
Nigel,
whether John or Fliss can take that directly.
Oh, right.
I'm sure we can get you an answer, Lynn, if we don't have one today.
Yeah, I think we can get you.
I think we might come back to you on those questions.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because I
think
suspect
that's
that Fliss isn't in the room. That's fine. We'll come back to you on that one.
Fliss is presenting later, so she may be on the line.
Okay. Well, if she is, maybe she can pick it up
Sue,
later.
is Fliss available to come in?
No.
Yes, there
Does
she is.
anyone else have any other questions for?
Fliss is saying she can answer.
Oh, so Fliss can answer.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Hi.
So Sue, could you?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes,
Yes,
you can.
thank
Thank you
you.
very much. for joining.
Okay, thank you for the question. Just to let you know that we have, you're correct. So all of the SEND schools within the county are now being contacted, and some have already engaged with us. And it is the hope that by the end of the summer term that we will have had engagement with all SEND schools.
That's excellent news. Thank you very much, Fliss. Have we managed to find Alan yet? And if not,
Alan's text, excuse me, Chair.
That's fine.
Alan's texted me and said he is trying to get in.
okay. While we just wait for Alan, the other task for us to do as this part of the meeting is to nominate one member from the committee to sit on the board, I believe. Are there any volunteers for that task? Liz? I'm very happy for Liz to do it. Okay, thank you, Liz. I think we'll accept that. That's helpful. A useful piece of business to do when we sort of this other issue. I haven't seen any disagreement with that nomination. I think probably somebody would have waved, but if you disagree with Liz being nominated, please wave now. No, I think that's all fine. Thank you, Liz. That's very helpful. Do people have questions for Alan? Were there questions that you particularly wanted to ask Alan? Because if not, we could probably move on.
I think between Fliss and myself, we should probably answer most questions around skills, Chair.
Was that Alan's question? No, I didn't. Okay. Okay. I think we might just move on.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm really sorry.
I think we're going to check the disaster.
That's fine. These things happen.
I think we achieved our
so we've had
objective.
a brief discussion. Anything else anybody wants to raise on this paper? And if not, I think we'll go to the recommendations. So the recommendations are that we nominate one Skills Committee member to be a member of the Programme Management Committee, and Liz has very kindly volunteered to do that. So thank you very much indeed, Liz. And we note that there will be representation from the Business Board. Can I have a proposer and seconder for the paper as there is? Thank you very much, John. Anybody else like to second? So if John proposes it and Mike will second, that's excellent. Thank you very much. And I look forward to understanding more about this this entire concept in the future, which is something I'm still getting my head around, I have to say. Thank you very much, Tamar. Is that everything you need from that item? So thank you very much, Nigel, for joining us, and we will look forward to working with you over the coming year.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you,
Good.
Committee.
Let's move on to item 3.1 on our agenda, which is the local skills report from Fliss.
Thank you, Chair.
So is Fliss still there? Let's hope so. No more technical difficulties.
Hopefully you can still hear me and I'm still on your screen. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Chair, and good morning to you all.
Thank you. Great, excellent to you all. Fantastic.
Brilliant.
Off you go. Wonderful.
Okay, so the committee are asked to note the publication of the local skills report. The local skills report is a requirement by the Department of Education for the grant funding agreement awarded to the Combined Authority by the Skills Advisory Panel, the SAP. As you will have seen, the local skills report is really quite a comprehensive document which discusses the local skills strategy, the priorities, and also areas for development and the challenges that the area faces too. It provides analysis on the progress made and also looks forward to the future actions required. The lengthy annexes contain core indicators as stipulated by the Department for Education on a number of important measures. And you will note that it compares the combined authority area against national averages too. Some of the indicators provide information on such as destinations of leavers from different types of education, from FE and HE, through to the data on hard to fill vacancies as well. The Combined Authority have received a further year of funding to continue the work of the SAP, and as part of the requirements this year, we will be refreshing the local skills report in November. I should state that while the report has been published, there is still an opportunity to make changes in the document if required, either waiting until the update in November, or if there are corrections that are required, we can do that now. I should note as well that under the skills investment, there is one item that needs to be amended as it is no longer relevant as an investment, and alternative options are being pursued. In addition, as expected, some investments are slower to achieve their outcomes and their targets due to the pandemic. One investment to note in particular is that of Peterborough College's Food Manufacturer Apprenticeship Academy. And whilst the creation of the facility has been created and we have welcomed learners, apprentices and employers in that facility, the number of outputs so far is slower than hoped, but the college are committed to utilise the space. and are engaged to ensure that more employers and learners use the facility. I hope that you found the report informative, and I am very happy to answer any questions that it might have stimulated. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for the report, which is extremely comprehensive and useful. Fliss, I'm coming to Liz next, please.
Hi Fliss, lovely to see you, and if not in the flesh, but on a large screen. It's a really well formed strategy, and I'm really pleased to have seen how things have moved on over the last couple of years from where we were. So this is really great. I just wanted to just ask one question about how, I was actually going to refer to page 79, which is about the social mobility and widening participation opportunity area, because of course we've got another year of the Fenland, of the opportunities area, and that is a real opportunity for East Cambs and Fenland to work together alongside all these other things we're talking about. And I was just wondering how you are anticipating engaging with that particular area when actually East Cambs is now split between Cambridge and Fenland and Peterborough. So East Cambs has been split in terms of the sub-economies, but I just wondered how this was going to work when East Cambs and Fenland work together. And I'm pleased to see we are.
So we are very engaged with the work that's being undertaken in the opportunity area. Moving forward, we had additional funds for the CEC contract through for the OA area. That will stop, but we are still engaging with the opportunity area with Sarah, with Jackie, and with a number of other colleagues too. And when we go on to the next item as well, Councillor Every as well, then you will see that when we're taking forward the new employment and skills strategy, that we're very much looking at place-based approach, and so therefore we will be having focus on each of the districts, making sure that we meet the needs and requirements of each of the individual districts going forward. So hopefully in the next item you will be assured that we very much are focused on that place-based approach.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Thank you, Fliss.
Thank you. Any other questions for Fliss on this? No?
Yes, if I could. Thank you. Thank you very much. I was particularly interested in the skills action plan, and I thought it was excellent the way it was set out, and there were just one or two things in there that I wanted to know how they're progressing. Wondered first of all if you were going to, in the future, produce this to us and have a sort of rank rating going through it, and how often. That was one question. And the other was I wanted to emphasise about the T levels, which of course are particularly important at the university, the new university for Peterborough, because it's going to be a technical university. And we do have our college, which is at the City College in Peterborough, who have been accepted to do T levels. And I think there's either 4 or 5 that they've been accepted for. So that's brilliant, starting in 2023. But obviously we want more to happen across the region, actually, in any of the colleges, because T levels I think are going to be very important in the future, particularly for this university. And just thirdly, just a comment again about the schools that you mention on page 91 and 2, which was the again in Peterborough, in Hampton, I think, and that was a pilot, and it has been successful, I gather. And I just wondered if it was going to be, having been a pilot, whether that would be encourageable through the schools throughout the whole region. So 3, I'm sorry.
It's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you, Fliss.
Hopefully I'll have remembered all of those. Yes, indeed. Again, going on to the new employment and skills strategy, there will be an action plan that is designed concurrently with the strategy, and I hope that, dependent on what you as a committee would like to see as an interval on the update on the actions, I very much want it to be a live document and used to make sure that we are accountable for all of those things that are going to come through in the strategy. So very much so an action plan right from the beginning, and we will be reporting on that in regular intervals. In relation to T levels, we are pulling together a T-level plan for the whole of the combined authority area. And we're already working very closely with Pat at City College to make sure that we can help warm up learners, but also employers too. So I think there's very much a dual process that we need to take forward. So employers getting ready for them to receive placements, but also to have that informed piece of information to therefore make sure that learners know that it is a viable option for them as an alternative to A-level. So yes, very much so. We're on with making sure that we are, as a region, ready for T-levels. And in relation to the Hampton project, we have met with the head there, and we have discussed lessons learned. I think that although successful, it is quite cost intensive, and so therefore we need to see whether or not we can access any funding to therefore see if we can take that wider afield. But there are some lessons learned that we will want to try and make sure we disseminate that across the region as well.
Thank you very much, Fliss, for excellent answers. I don't see any other questions on this paper. I think we just note this one as well. Is this coming back to us in November? Is that the idea, that this is?
I think this would be, yes, there will be a refresh in November that will come back to you, but at the same time, the actual skills strategy, because this is a report on what's happening rather than the strategy of what we're going to do hugely. So you'll have both. You'll have the skills strategy and this document.
Chair, could I just mention one thing about the skills report, just to make sure that people do understand that on page 96, which is the Health and Care Sector Work Academy, it is the Peterborough City College as opposed to Peterborough College, who should be mentioned there, because Peterborough College used to be the Peterborough Regional College, and it is quite confusing.
Indeed. Fliss, did you get that?
I can confirm that's already been rectified and has been amended on the website already. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. That's very helpful. In which case, I think we will move on to accept the report. Again, do you need a proposer and a seconder, Neymar? Any volunteers? Neil will propose, and I'm happy to second on this one. And I think there's no objection, and many thanks, Fliss, for a very impressive document, so thank you very much. Good, we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the employment and skills strategy, which is back with Fliss.
Yeah, I'm afraid it's me again. Thank you, Chair. Okay, so this paper, in my opinion, nicely follows on from the local skills report, where it is recommended to develop a new employment and skills strategy. This paper asks the committee to recommend to the Combined Authority Board to approve the proposed approach to the development of the employment and skills strategy. The paper sets out the approach to the consultation and engagement of the future strategy. And it's the intention to consult widely, both on place and by professionalism too. You will note that we are proposing to have an open call, so therefore anybody within the region are able to respond to the consultation, in addition to holding specific sessions on a place-based basis, but also on professionalism basis. And then we will also be using existing committees, either that the Combined Authority runs or to ones that we have a seat on, to make sure that the consultation process is as inclusive as possible. In relation to getting the data to inform the strategy, we have already recently concluded a skills deep dive paper, which looked at the growth sectors within the area, and we're looking to expand the data collection we've already had to make sure that it's fully comprehensive to inform the future works. Just to let you know, some of the cross-cutting themes that we think that we will be taking forward will be the impact of the pandemic on the skills requirements of our regional employers. As already noticed before, on EU exit and Brexit, we'll be looking at the work and health agenda, and also we'll have a big focus on the skills for the green economy and net zero targets, and in addition, digital transformation as well. One thing that you should be aware of is the Department for Education are also trialling new governance arrangements for skills oversight, and as recommended in the Skills for Job White Paper. We have supported the Chamber of Commerce in their application to become a trailblazer for the new local skills improvement plans. And if we were to be successful in that, we envisage that this new employment and skills strategy will form the basis of that plan. Happy to take any comments or questions on this paper.
So I have a question on this, but I'm going to come to Mike first, and then I'll ask mine. Go on.
Thank you, Chair. Fliss, I have to say this looks very ambitious, given what you're attempting to do and given what you're attempting to take into account, and bearing in mind we're in June and we're publishing in September, and we're going to do detailed consultation by place. I'm just wondering if it's feasible to actually achieve that within the timescales that's been identified. I see from the timeline that an awful lot of work's already been done, but in terms of consultation with members, with those groups that are disadvantaged, those groups that require skills, I'm just thinking within the city alone, being parochial, within Cambridge alone, that would be difficult. And then when you try then to combine it across the county as a whole, with what I can see is at least 3 to 4 very different priority areas and needs and different geographical perspectives, to then bring it back here and get it approved. Again, I come back to it, it sounds ever so ambitious. And it's just about, is it realistic in terms of the timescales?
Just to say, Chris, Fliss, my question was also about timescales, so I had a feeling that Mike might have asked it, and he has.
Thank you.
The timescales are ambitious. We have been planning this work for quite some time. We have a lot of data. You'll also note that there are a number of sector strategies as well that the Business Board has led on. So there has been wide consultation on all of the priority sectors already. We are looking at holding 2 weeks of intensive consultation spots. And if we can't stick to the timelines and feel that we're trying to push this forward too soon, then I think it would be acceptable to therefore say we would push the targets out. One of the reasons why we want to take this forward is that if the local skills improvement plan was to go ahead, we really want the foundations of the plan to be in place.
Mike.
If I can come back, bearing in mind we've got a new mayor, bearing in mind we've got a new county council administration, and the politics have changed, it just seems to, sorry, leaving aside Peterborough, but forgive me, I didn't mean to be so parochial, but it just feels that this is just too much, if I'm honest, and it's almost like we need to almost get the basics right in place just from the administrations, let alone actually implementing it. I would rather, and again, I'm happy to be reassured, but I'd rather get this right, bearing in mind the long-term implications for the skills strategy over the coming years. And I think what I'm saying is, don't be shy to ask for the extra time rather than push to get something done that's not going to be quite as well as we want. So again, I come back to being very parochial in Cambridge. There are certain parts of the city that I know will have one priority, and there's other parts that will have a very different priority. And it's about how you even that up and make sure it fits for the city, and then you multiply that by 7. And again, it's just don't be shy to ask for extra time on it.
And again, just to follow up on that, I absolutely agree with Mike. I think we will want to report back on this to the next committee.
Yeah.
But I think quite the clear steer you're getting from the committee is that if it's not complete, that's okay. We would rather it was done well than that we had to sign something off in September. So I think I'm getting nods all around on that. Neil.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I would actually endorse exactly what you said, particularly around the process of consultation and engagement. You know, it's in sort of COVID times, it's quite difficult to get people to actively engage. So getting that right and making sure you're contacting all these disparate bodies, giving them a really good opportunity to understand what you're asking and getting that feedback shouldn't be hurried.
And particularly in the area of skills, when actually, if you're trying to talk to the FE colleges and other colleges and you're not there for the whole of August and it's now the middle of June, I think I think we will be very, very interested to see what you bring back to us in September, but I think it's quite likely that there will be needing to be more work on that. Is that helpful, Fliss?
Yeah, noted. I take your points entirely, and I recognise timescales are tight. I think one thing that I would give you my assurance is that I, more than anybody, wants to make sure that this is right for the region and fully inclusive too. So we will try and take this forward, but I will give you my assurances that we will not rush it at the detriment of quality.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you very much. At which point, did you need more from us on that, Tamar, or are you happy? We still need to have a proposal to second it. Okay. Well, I'm happy to propose this one. Any volunteers to second this time? Neil, thank you very much. And I think there's been no objection. I think we're very much welcoming this piece of work, and we want to see it done really well. Is the conclusion. Excellent. Right, the next item on the agenda is the budget and performance report, which I'm told is from Vanessa. Is she available?
Good morning. Am I now connected?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you very much.
Welcome committee and to the new members especially. I look forward to working with you over the next few months as we move forward. This financial report is really a summary of the end of year report. Please bear in mind that this has not yet been presented to the CA board. That will be at the end of June, later this month. However, this gives you an indication of what we will be proposing to the CA board with regards to potential carry forward and reporting of underspends and other overspends. With luck, I have covered all the major points of where the differences lay with the budget for the year that we have just finalised. The ones that I would really like to point out, and have already been mentioned in this meeting, is the AEB underspend, which I believe Parminder has expressed quite clearly the reasons behind the underspend that we've had with regards to providers and the difficulties with COVID-19, and also the Health and Care Sector Work Academy, which is, as you all know, is running through Peterborough, has experienced many delays and difficulties with COVID-19 as outlined. They are starting to move forward again on that, and we are receiving claims already this year to start the ball rolling properly. Other than that, there was some minor differences on income. There was no effect on the capital, which was purely related to the University of Peterborough, and that has now become underway and is now running as its own separate entity. I present the report to the committee and welcome any questions.
Thank you very much indeed. Do I have a question? Mike?
Yes, sorry, jumping around. It's whether or not the government will claw back the money rather than allow us to carry it forward.
When you say clawback, I think I've noted that the AEB money is devolved to us, if that's what you're relating to, so that is ring fenced and will not be clawed back. The Health and Care Sector Work Academy, that will all depend on the agreement that the project manages to strike with the Department for Work and Pensions. If they do not manage to get an extension, then that will be clawed back. However, that is held in a ring-fenced pot within the CPCA, as we did receive the funds in advance. So it won't actually impact any other areas of the finances, should we say.
It's a fairly obvious question in that, just as the government, they would argue, have been very generous with funding us through COVID, I suspect they're going to start wanting money back, and therefore that when they identify pots that haven't been spent due to COVID, one would anticipate that they might request that funding to be returned.
Is there any particular pot that you're referring to in particular, Mike?
No, it was a more general question. It was just if there are any early indications at all.
There are none for the AEB at all. That the AEB side, they've confirmed there will be no clawbacks on that one.
Thank you.
Can I just ask about the Health and Care Sector Work Academy money that hasn't been spent? Is that money that was expected to be spent on training people during the course of this year that then hasn't happened? I mean, if that's the case, presumably if it were clawed back, it would have an impact on the ability to grow that provision the following year, because we wouldn't have money to do that, but it wouldn't have an impact on the current expected level of training for that sector that we need. Have I summarised that correctly, Vanessa?
Yes, I believe you have. Sorry, John, would you like to step in?
Fliss is there, she can answer that. Actually, Fliss, I was going to. Fliss has said that she'd like to answer.
If you're happy to answer, Fliss, that would be great.
Hi. So just to let you know that there has been a change request that's been submitted to DWP for the allocation of funds, and that was following an external review, independent review and midpoint review, and so therefore it's currently sat with the DWP to reallocate and profile the spend. So we're waiting an outcome from DWP on that.
So we're very much hoping that they will reprofile it, but if they don't, presumably that means we've lost some opportunity over the last year, but not that we would lose training places that we're expecting to have for next year and the following year.
Agreed, and I think it's highly unlikely that DWP won't agree to it.
Okay, that's very reassuring, because clearly, I mean, there is an urgent need for training more people in the health and care sector. So I hope you're right, because obviously to be able to increase the number of people we're training in the next couple of years would be very desirable indeed. But that's very helpful clarification. Thank you. Are there any other questions on? Yes, Lynn.
Thank you very much. Can I just, on page 183, and it's little h, there's mention there of these 2 overspends currently projected, and it gives a reason why. Both are due to the delay of the business growth service starting, so to which these contracts were planned to be transferred. And it says thereby necessitating extension of the previous delivery contracts for both. Does that mean they don't need any further spend, in other words? And so that's why it's not in the final column. I'm just trying to understand it more than anything. It's just not in the final column, because they will be extended and then they'll transfer to the business growth service. That's what will happen.
Yes.
Thank you.
Probably best for Vanessa to give you an accurate answer. I believe that.
Good. Thank you. Thank you.
Vanessa?
Yes, that's correct. I believe what's happened there is in the formatting of the papers with people dropping in and out to check data. There's a little section been missed out there because there's two commas. The business growth service was due to start in October. However, there were numerous delays and it didn't start until mid-February, as you've already been informed by Nigel. What that has meant is that those services have now transferred across, and yes, there is no further spend on that other than with the CEC, where we have a separate contract, as we also employ someone directly within the CPCA that hasn't transferred to the growth company.
Thank you, that's very clear. Thank you very much. I don't see any other questions on this paper. So I'm happy to note that paper, and we presumably still need a proposer and a seconder. So I'm happy to propose a seconder. Thank you, Mike. And we'll accept that paper. Thank you very much indeed. I've now been told that Alan Downton is now available. So if we wanted to go back to that part of the agenda, I'm very happy to. But I also am happy to close the meeting at that point if we don't have any specific questions for him, because I think we did manage to cover that paper perfectly well. Okay, please thank Alan for us. So just say
Thank you, Chair.
that we were happy with that paper. Thank you all very much indeed. I think probably we'll close the meeting there. So we'll take the meeting off, close the meeting formally. Thank you all for your attendance. When we've gone Can you tell us when we stop broadcasting?